we've seen an actual increase in some violations from contractors. And pretty much we've seen that most of the contractors, they're not being deceitful, they're not bad guys, they're just, were naive and didn't know our rules, laws, and regulations. And I realize some of you contractors, this is not really going to pertain to you because you're not out clearing trees and you're probably building the house. But if the house needs to be, the land needs to be cleared, the timber landowner is supposed to get a harvest permit. And most of you live in this county, so it could help you to pay attention and help spread the word. Let's see, I've been with CAL FIRE for 10 years. My office is over off of Ridge Road in Nevada City. And again, we have a goal of being proactive and positive enforcement, and we're trying to spread the word to keep you guys out of trouble, because nothing like getting that letter saying you could be held civilly or criminally liable, $10,000 per count, and it could be multiple counts, right? That could add up, and that's a pretty scary letter to get. And quite frankly, I don't like sending them. I don't get any benefit from sending them. The money that we do get does not go to us. It goes to the general fund. And it's just a negative thing all the way around. So let's try to prevent it. Let's see, I've given this talk several times to multiple groups, and I always get asked 3 common questions. So I thought I would go ahead and start with answering those 3 questions before I start into like the meat and potatoes. And the meat and potatoes is not much. It's really quick. I hope to be out of here in 10 minutes. So, and ask me any questions anytime. This is totally informal. The number 1 question I get asked is, what is a forester? Second question I get asked is, why is a forester working for a fire department? And the third question is why in California do we have all these rules, laws, and regulations? Why is it that we got to get a harvest document to cut a tree down? Why is it that you're up here giving this talk? So the first question of forester is a lot like many professions where you can get specialized and do special things, like contractors, right? You can be a roofer, you can be an underground guy, you can be a concrete guy, you can be a general, you can do it all. Forestry is the same thing. So to summarize what a forester is someone who manages timberland for forest resources such as wood, right? While taking into consideration other things such as wildlife, aesthetics, recreation, air quality, water quality, all that fun stuff that we have to protect. So it's to get something out of the woods, which is wood, timber, and protect those other resources and not have a negative effect on the environment. And wood or timber is kind of a unique resource where it actually grows back. Where if you were in the mining operations of coal or steel, it doesn't grow back really. So it's kind of unique, and I'm proud to be a forester and proud to here today to come educate you guys on it. The second question is, why is it that you have foresters working for CAL FIRE? Fire agency. Well, CAL FIRE is more than just a fire agency. The actual name of our department is the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. So we're essentially 2 departments under one patch. We used to go by the acronym of CDF, and in 2006, for whatever reason, I still do not know, they dropped the acronym CDF and went to the term CAL FIRE. But the name of our department is still the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. We're still run by the Board of Forestry, and nothing's changed other than signs on our engines and the patch logo. And then the third question, I've tried Googling this several times. Why is it that we're in this state that we have? Why do we have this thick rule book that I have to enforce? And this isn't even all of it. Google can't tell me that. I don't know the actual answer, but I'm going to give you an educated guess. And please, if you guys have any ideas of why or comments, let me know, because I'm open. But I think a lot of it goes back to our history of how the state got created. So what happened in 1849? The gold rush, right? That is when this state really blossomed. People came from all around the world to strike it rich. And they did anything and everything possible to get the American dream, right? Get the gold out of the ground. They started first by doing what we call placer mining, which is just getting the gold out of the creeks. When that dried up, they started diverting the creeks, moving boulders, doing all sorts of stuff, and then got into hydraulic mining. And if you've ever been out to Malakoff State Diggings or over here to Greenwood Creek, you can see the destruction and devastation that hydraulic mining did. And in, I think it was 1870s, the people of California revolted and said, enough is enough. We're losing our habitat, we're losing our fish in our creeks, and many people were killed in Sacramento and Marysville and Yuba City from flooding. This is before we had dams. All that material was pushed down the creek, and then we got rain like we just had, and all that material came crashing down and flooded Sacramento and other places. So people said, we need protection. And if you think about the people that lived back then, if they wanted to stay warm, they didn't have the luxury of going over and turning up the thermostat, right? They didn't have natural gas piped to their house. They didn't have propane. They didn't have electricity. If they wanted to stay warm, they needed firewood, right? They needed wood. If they needed to cook, they needed wood. If they needed a house, metal was super expensive. Concrete was like absolutely only for the rich. And so everything was based around wood. And if you've ever been to the Gym Boys here in town and seen the old photographs of what this place looked like back in 1849, 1860s, this place was denuded. This place was completely creamed of wood. That's because all those people flocked here and all those people needed wood for living, and also for the mines. All that water that was taken from up in the high country all had to come down to do all the hydraulic mining, and that all took flumes. The railroads needed trestles, and all the mine shafts all needed timbers for supports. All that stuff was just utilized, and no one was replanting. And, the fish were dying. So people, again, revolted. And in 1885, they formed the Board of Forestry. And the Board of Forestry was formed to protect timberland, to protect the land so that we always have a renewable source so that people can stay warm and cook and build houses. Well, as you can imagine, those miners and those people back then were kind of unruly, right? They weren't used to law and rules, and there was really no one to enforce it. They actually relied on the U.S. Army, and this went on for quite a while, and people finally again revolted and said enough's enough. And in 1905, the very first state forester was created, which was the Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. And it was actually in Auburn, I think is where the office was. And it was for this surrounding foothill area to protect the resources from all the miners. And the goal was there to protect the timber, and a big part of the problems with timber was fire. So they became the Forestry and Fire Department, all mixed into one. And now we go by the name CAL FIRE, but we're still the same department. So fast forward a little bit further, we had all sorts of people still utilizing wood. And you had World War II, people coming home from war, the building boom there. And we had there was actually state taxes called an ad valorem tax, where you actually got taxed on the standing trees of your property. So if you didn't want to pay taxes, you would go out and you cut your trees down. That way you didn't have to pay any taxes. Well, the state finally realized that's a bad idea, right? So they actually changed the law to a yield tax. But there was all these things that was just working against us. And finally, in 1973, a foreigner by the name of Zeeberg Nedgely came here from Germany. I think he was a professor at Berkeley, and he liked to go up to Tahoe in the summers. And he saw the devastation and the problems over in Germany, after several wars, and no trees. And then he came here and he saw that we were clear cutting, and we were cutting way more trees than what we were growing. And he sued the state of California and actually won. And in that lawsuit came the Forest Practice Act in 1973. And that's what I enforce today. From that act came whole sorts of rules to ensure that the act is met. And the intent of the act is to ensure that we have sustainable forest going into the future while we protect other forest resources such as water, aesthetics, air, and all the other critters in the woods. So that's how we've come to where we are. Don't shoot the messenger, right? I'm the guy that enforces the rules. I'm not the guy that created the rules. These rules were created before I was even born. The snowball's been thrown, and snowballs are getting bigger, and the rules are just compounding and getting more complex. There's a lot of environmentalists out there that are adding to this and fighting these rules. We are sued every year, and we have a job to do, which is enforce those rules to make sure that the act is being carried out and we don't get sued and everybody lives peacefully. So are there any questions on that before I get into the kind of meat and potatoes?
Well, for the forest harvest permit, what species are part of that? Is it just timbering things that you make lumber out of, like fir and redwood, or if you're cutting down an oak tree, how many oak trees before you need a permit?
That's good. I'll get into that. I have a handout. I only have 10. I didn't realize how many people would be here. So if you're not going, or maybe someone can make copies if someone needs them, but I'll pass these out. So, all right, let's get into the meat and potatoes. So, the rules say that CAL FIRE only has jurisdiction over timberland. That right there is a major contention or a major conflict with people, because people don't understand the definition of timberland. They think it is zoning, TPZ, timber production zoning. Zoning is a county allowance of what you can do for that land. If it's commercial zoning, then you can build a commercial building. If it's residential, you can do this. If it's agriculture, you can kind of do this kind of agriculture stuff, right? The state definition of timberland has nothing to do with zoning. It has to do with what the land is capable of performing. So if your land is capable of growing a crop of trees, and all these, I've listed these in the back, some of these definitions. But essentially, if it's the native conifers here, the ponderosa pine, the sugar pine, the Doug fir, the white fir, the incense cedar, if you're growing those, your land is timberland. So a majority of this land out here in Nevada County is timberland. If you're growing those, you are going to do commercial harvesting, whether you sell, barter, or trade, that triggers commercial. You need to get a harvest document from us, and we have a whole list of them. I'll kind of go over them a little bit. And here's the kicker. If you sell, barter, trade, or if you convert, and a lot of people miss that part. So if you own 5 acres up off of Red Dog, and it looks like this there, and you want to build a house, and you got to cut those trees down to build the house, you have, if even if it's one tree, you have to get a conversion document from us. Okay? I told you, don't shoot the messenger. I'm not the guy that wrote these rules. So if it's timberland, now if you live down in, say, like Penn Valley, where it's oak woodland, you're not growing these species, I have no jurisdiction. Cal Fire has no jurisdiction on oak woodland. It's only on timberland. And timberland, it should be in this definition, is capable and available for growing a crop of trees, and then we went ahead and listed these trees. So you'll see the group A and then the group B species. So people get confused with group B, it says oak, right? Well, it has to be, the oak has to grow with association with the group A. So if all you have is oak trees on your property, which is pretty rare, but it does happen, especially in the oak woodland, then I have no jurisdiction, and you don't need it. But if there's an oak tree and a madrone tree, and it looks like this with some conifers, that's timberland. So if you sell, barter, or trade those species, or if you convert that land, you have to get a harvest document from us. All our harvest documents require the work to be done by a licensed timber operator. So what is a licensed timber operator? It's essentially a logger. And the state of California, Cal Fire, issues those licenses. We're in charge of it. And essentially you have to have 3,000 hours of working underneath another logger. And then you have to go to a class. It's $45. It's a 2-day class. And we offer them 6 times a year, up and down the state. And you can become a logger and do your own logging. We get people that want to do the American dream, you know, move up here and live off their land and log it themselves. There is a special clause. If you're a timber landowner, you can get a license. You don't need the insurance. You don't need the experience. All you have to do is go to the class, and you can get a license to log your own property. I think it's similar that way with like builders, right? You can get your own permit to build your own house. Is that true? So it's very similar. And in fact, I see a lot of similarities between logging and building, right? If you want to go build a house, you just don't go to Home Depot, go onto the lot and start building, right? I mean, you could, but you could risk, some trouble, right? From the permitting people that are supposed to give you permits. The same thing goes with logging. If you want to start logging, you got to get a permit from us. And then we would hope you have a licensed person to do that work, just like I'm sure you guys would want a licensed contractor to start doing the building, right? I built my own house. I wish I would have contracted a contractor on several things. I'm living with the pain now.
What about the slippery slope where you harvest your own trees but you don't sell them? And you get a mill in there and you mill it up, you put it on stickers, and then you get it so that you can use that wood for your siding.
Okay, so basically it boils down to if you conduct a commercial timber operation or if you convert it. So you're saying you cut down the trees, you mill it up for your own purpose, and you're not selling it. I can pound sand, I can't do anything. We encourage you, we want people to do that. If you have a tree that's just in your backyard and you want to cut it down for firewood, you can do that. We want you to do that. We want you to clear. We want you to do your defensible space. We want you to do forest health. We want you to help your neighbors out. What we don't want you doing is commercializing it and saying, hey, I'll come do your tree and I'll trade you. I'll get the wood for it. And then, that's bartering, that's trading. And then you fall the tree over wrong backwards and it hits someone, kills someone. Next thing you know, you didn't have insurance, you didn't have a license, you didn't have the training. Common sense. So we're trying to protect the public, we're trying to protect the resources. There's a lot of rules out there, and that's part of the thing is to make you go to the class. We don't expect you to be, Paul Bunyan before you come to the class and know everything about the woods, but we teach you the rules, the laws, and the regulations. There's so much out there. I mentioned water quality. You guys have to get SWIP plans for construction sites. There's so much that goes involved when you do logging, from botanical surveys, wildlife surveys, archaeological surveys. It just goes on and on and on. And you as the contractor can get in serious trouble and ring up a pretty hefty fine. We can go criminally or civilly, and I would rather not do that. I'd rather meet you on a good day than a bad day.
So what qualifies as a tree? How big in diameter has it got to be before?
There is no diameter limit. We have a little sapling.
Sapling
baby.
coming out of the ground is.
Yep, there is no diameter limit. There is no
So we got
zoning.
to call a logger to brush it out if it's this high.
If you're going to convert it, then technically you're supposed to have a logger, and a logger is going to say, you can do this. You're just going to use my license. I'm going to fill out this form, and you're going to bring in your backhoe and put in the footings, and there you go, right? Would the logger do that with 4-foot trees? Probably not. You're going to say, I'm going to have to do this, and yeah. And then the good thing is those trees can be valuable and offset the cost, and actually sometimes even make you money. It all depends on the species, the current situation with the mills. Right now, we just have a gluttony of wood coming from all the fires, and the mills can't handle the amount of wood they have now, so they're, it's a common supply and demand question, and there's so much supply coming in, not so much demand, so it's not really paying that much. But it fluctuates, and most loggers know the market and know how to take advantage of that. So even if you don't want to become an LTO and don't want to get your license, I encourage you to team up with ones if you are in the construction trade of building homes and clearing, and because they'll know the market and help you out and keep you out of trouble. So if you sell, you barter, or you trade these species, or if you convert, you got to have a harvest document from us. There's a license that you can get to do it. Landowners can get that license, and that's pretty much it. That's the meat and potatoes. Are there any questions?
Yeah, with conversion, so let's say you're developing a piece of property, you're going to put a residence on it, you're going to take down a few trees that are in the way of the residence, but you're not intending to change the nature of the landscape. Is that conversion?
So the way we look at it is, can the tree grow back? If you cut the tree down and you put a swimming pool there, the trees don't grow out of the swimming pool. So that's converted. If you cut the tree down, you think you're going to build a house there, you have intent, right? You're intentionally going to build there. You have to get it because you have the intent. Well, let's say you can fit a house right here, and there's no trees to cut, but then you get worried that that tree might fall on your house. So you cut it down. You're not selling it, you're not bartering, you're not trading it, you're not putting a hot tub over there where that tree grew, you're not putting the driveway in there, you're not converting where that tree grew. You don't need a permit. And then if you do want to sell that, we have all sorts of documents, and the documents are all free. And they're 2 pages. It's the timber landowner, the timber owner, and the logger, and a map. And they all get sent in one packet to, and now you can even do it online, to Cal Fire's region office up out of Reading for this area. And they send it down to me, and I'm the local inspector for Nevada County area. I saw another question. Okay, so let me just take another minute to talk about the type of harvesting exemptions we have. The most common one we used to get was what we call a THP, a timber harvest plan. And that's more for large landowners that usually own more than 40 acres and want to manage their land for sustainable forestry. Most people in Nevada County don't own that much land, so I'll talk more about the small-time landowners. So we have probably about 15 different exemptions, and when I say exemption, it means you're exempt from getting that timber harvest plan. The timber harvest plan is a big, thick environmental document about the who, what, where, when, and how, and why. It's about a 200-page document, the average. The exemption is exempt from getting that document, and they're usually 3 pages. The landowner, the timber owner, and I guess that's kind of important to know that you as the landowner might not be the timber owner. Someone can retain the rights of that property, or you can sell your rights to someone else. And so that's why we have to have both the timber landowner and the timber owner, and then the logger in a map. So the most common exemption we get is what we call a 10% dead and dying. So let's say this is my house. I own 2 acres here, and these a couple trees over here are dying. My neighbor's a logger. He said he'd come over and give me some money for those trees. I'd have to file the exemption because I'm selling, I'm bartering, or trading, and I can remove up to 10% of my volume off my acreage annually just to take care of the dead and dying trees. The next one we get a lot of is our 150-foot exemption, which allows you to cut any tree up to 150 foot from your structure, any permitted structure. So if you got a house, a barn, and a shop, you can remove trees up to 150 feet around all 3 of those buildings for defensible space. Again, we want you to be fire safe. We have a 3-acre conversion, which is starting to be real common, which is where you can convert up to 3 acres for whatever you want. Swimming pool, house, garden, driveway, marijuana garden seems to be the big one right now. You name it, barns, tennis courts, I've seen a runway. If you're gonna clear trees and you're gonna convert, you can get this exemption up to 3 acres. If you wanna go over 3 acres, like you wanna put in a huge vineyard, you have to go the THP route, which is that big 200-page document. Or you're gonna put in a big Safeway or something like that. You have to get the THP. We have another exemption out there for the drought mortality. When the drought hit us, we had the people that had more than 10% of their trees die. And so we got that one. There's another one out there that allows you to do forest thinning and fire prevention. It has to be tied to the community fuel break and stuff. But the first 3, the 10%, the 150, and the 3-acre conversion are probably the most common that you'll see or utilize.
With that 150, you said from a permanent structure, is that new, existing, both?
So yeah, you can't use the 150 to like convert to get the building permit.
Okay.
But if you have the permit and the building like foundations in, then you can file the 150 to clear around the footings or whatever it is.
You see any of the rules changing next year?
The rules actually just changed this year, and it was usually the rules get worse.
Yeah.
But this year was actually a whole brand new rule package increasing the exemptions. In fact, I forgot to mention this big one that just went in. The state realizes that the small-time landowner has actually been kind of pushed out of managing timberland because they have to get this timber harvest document that's 200 pages. A registered professional forester has to write it, and that person's going to charge anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 to get that document approved. And we're seeing the amount of timber harvest plans just go down. The acreages are getting larger, but the amount of numbers are going down, and the small landowners are not being able to afford this cost. So the state created this special exemption called the small landowner exemption, which allows you to put up to 100 acres under this exemption. Again, under this 3-page document, it does take a registered professional forester to file it for you. It still takes a licensed logger to perform the work, but essentially you can go do individually tree selection, thinning, all under a free document. So yeah, we are seeing the rules change every year, and sometimes they're getting better.
What about regarding fire, rules for defensible space with all the fires? Are they looking at, talking about changing any of that?
Yeah, that's big talk, and that was before the camp incident. It's always been a topic of issue, but with Santa Rosa burning, there was a Senate Bill 901 that actually got proposed, and it got whittled down through the Assembly bill process, but essentially it did get passed, and a lot of it is out there too. Well, there's another exemption that was created for fuels and thinning, and some leeway given to utility companies. And I don't know if you've noticed driving around town, PG&E has hired thousands of contractors and are increasing their fuel breaks along their transmission and distribution lines.
Get rid of Manzanita.
And underneath it, they are mowing. They're what we call masticating. They're in there with these machines that are grinding that material up, hauling it off site. And quite frankly, it's a little sad because there's actually nowhere to haul that stuff right now. And that's part of the Assembly Bill 901 was to create infrastructure to get rid of this. The mill can only handle so much, and the mill doesn't take Manzanita. It does make beautiful wood, though. So there is part of the 901 to increase biomass facilities. The problem with biomass is its air quality issues. So they're trying to loosen the regulations on air quality. There's a lot of legal, I told you we're getting sued. That's a lot of where we're getting sued is on air quality, some water quality issues.
Going back to the exemptions, do you or someone else go visit properties and give the homeowners or developers an idea of what kind of exemptions they may be able to get with certain pieces of property?
I do, and I encourage them to call me all they can, as much as they can, and I try to do outreach like this to you guys so you can spread the word, even if you're not even in the logging or the clearing and building the houses, because, like I said, we're trying to do positive enforcement, and we don't want issues. So people call me all the time, hey, can you come look at this? What do you recommend? And it's a fine line because I can't give them a certain contract, and that's always what they want. Who do I hire? Or what? Am I getting gypped? Or I have to walk that thin line and hand them handouts and just tell them get bids and check for references, check to make sure they're licensed, check to make sure they're insured, all that good jazz. But I'm one guy for most of Nevada County, and there's a lot of timberland here. So I also recommend that they hire registered professional foresters, and we have many consulting ones in this area. And a lot of them will come out and do what I call house calls in anticipation of that's like their business card getting out. So that, oh yeah, that guy, he was really nice, he educated me, I'm gonna hire him, kind of type thing. And then most of the foresters know the loggers in the area. And just like different contractors can do specialize in different things, loggers are the same way. We have loggers that specialize in just doing small backyard stuff. And then we have contractors that work for the large industrial landowners that work way up country and have big equipment and many trucks and yarders and all that stuff.
Do you have a list of those consultants?
We do, it's on here. It's on the second page. It gives you an address where you can look for registered professional foresters, and then it gives you also the licensed timber operators, which is the loggers.
Okay.
And then, the foresters, the Cal Fire foresters are there. That's, where I'm at. We have me for Nevada County, Alex Stone for Sierra and Yuba County, Dan Suey for Placer County, and then our supervisor, David Amati, handles the high country and the top basin. We're either out of the Nevada City office, we're here off Ridge Road, or our headquarters office in Auburn. And we do like to come out and educate and work with people, so please call us. That's what we're giving you our number. All right. Well, thank you for allowing me to come and stop by the station or give us a call if you have any questions.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.